Hey, everybody. My name is Justin Levinson. You are at the Agency Side Podcast. So excited to be here today with Chad Broude, who is the CCO, co-founder of Highdive Advertising. And I'm so excited to have you here today. I'm great to be with you, Chad.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, I think the thing I'd like to just start with is maybe you can just tell our viewers who might not know about what your agency does, what exactly you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. We are a full service advertising agency. We've been around for about 8.5 years. We were almost at like the very beginning of like when all these smaller shops were popping up. Since then, there's been so many great ones. But yeah, do a lot of big brands. Our roster includes State Farm, Jeep, Jersey Mike's, KFC, Airheads, BetMGM, and more. And yeah, we touch every part of their advertising business.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, I see. I was kind of looking at your profile a little bit and kind of stalking you and seeing how you got into this industry a little bit. I noticed that you started from a copy background. Is that sort of where your beginning started?
Yeah, I was a copywriter at DDB for about 9 years. It was the only agency I was at, and I was there for 9 years. And then the ECD at the time, who's now my current partner, Mark Gross, I walked down the hall. I'm like, should we start our own agency? And it was funny because like a lot of people have had those conversations, especially back then. You talk about it all the time, but no one really did it. And when he kind of looked at me, goes, "Yeah, let's get together this weekend and put down the plan." I was like, "Okay, he's serious," and it got real fast.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did you guys just sort of like quit your jobs and start, or were you sort of like, I mean, how does that sort of like obviously you have the idea, but how does that sort of like actually happen?
We talked about it. We were meeting every weekend and starting to kind of figure out like how we want to do things different from the other shops we've been at and what will be our kind of positioning, the way of doing things. And it didn't just happen like a few days after that conversation, probably 6 to 9 months after that. What's funny is, you start talking about it and it gets a little bit of momentum and then it kind of slows down. And I got offered this job in LA and we're in Chicago now and I was back then. And I was really thinking about taking it. And then I woke up the next morning after having a good conversation with the agency. I called Mark and I'm like, "Are we going to do this? Because, I'm ready to make a move." He goes, "Yeah, let's do this." And then it got real fast. I think we probably resigned a week later.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. I like those bold moves. I like doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I guess I mean, obviously you guys were brainstorming for a while on how it didn't happen just overnight. But like I guess did you feel like you already sort of had a name in the industry where getting clients was sort of gonna you kind of were confident that they were gonna come, or did you sort of feel like you guys were gonna have to hit the pavement and really like bang on some doors?
It's funny. This is like some of the best advice I could give people who are thinking about doing it. So we thought we had a little bit of a name of an industry, especially Mark, who is at DDB for 22 years and won more awards there than anyone, way more than I did. So I thought we were going to be able to leverage our relationships and our reputation, and we were wrong. That first 12 months was scary, and what we learned in that moment or that year, which we should have known because we're in the business of branding, is we had to build our own brand again. People knew us, but they didn't know High Dive. And you got to step in their shoes of they're charged at driving their brand and driving sales and all that. And it's a big decision to give an agency a big project and a big budget. And it took a few years to start hitting a few home runs, having a lot of success in the Super Bowl, which was big for us.
Saw that.
Then we started to develop our own brand. And then some of the older relationships started becoming a little bit more real again. But yeah, you have to, I guess my advice would be don't assume that all your relationships will just kind of transfer with you because you're an unknown and you haven't done it alone and you haven't ran your own business yet.
Yeah, no, that totally resonates. About the Super Bowl, maybe you can explain what the success that you had and what it means to like, the Super Bowl ad meter. You guys were like crushing it on that front. What's that all about?
Yeah, the ad meter is just one of the you know, competitions that they do to kind of rank the best ads. It's one of the more reputable ones, and we've really built a reputation on it in a lot of great ways. We've won the ad meter 4 out of the last 6 years. We actually lost it this year by point 0.1, which is heartbreaking. It would have been 5 out of the last 6. And it's just, you know, in USA Today where people go and vote on their favorite spot. So it's less of like agency experts, it's more just real people voting on it. But what was great about that is you get a lot of press, you get a lot of love from publications outside the industry. And it's like you almost get two Super Bowls, is what I always say, because you run the spot in the game, and the next day, every news station across America talks about America's favorite ad. So we started putting a few of those wins together, which was crazy. And then, you know, it started really shaping up our reputation as an agency that could connect with mass America.
Yeah, that's super cool. I was looking at your portfolio and looking at a lot of other really cool projects. Like you were working with Jeep, and I saw like Fritos, a lot of big brands. Is there any? I guess is there any campaign that you're most proud of that you had that really stood out to you?
Honestly, you love them all. What's special about the 2020 project with it was Jeep and Rocket Mortgage that year, and no one ever heard of Highdive, and we had no reputation in the industry. And we had two spots that made a big splash that year. It was the Jeep spot called Groundhog Day, which was cool because it was the Super Bowl's on Groundhog Day. And we got Bill Murray, who was like a unicorn get in the industry, although I do think he was in the spot this year. But before then, he never was. And then we had a Jason Momoa spot for Rocket Mortgage about being comfortable, where he takes all, the joke was like he takes all his muscles and his hair off at home, and he's kind of this puny bald guy, and which also crushed, especially like in the social space, and it still does. You see these memes pop up all the time. So like overnight, people are like, "Who did that?" You know, and like you kind of looked at it, you're like, "I've never heard of these guys." And then there was two, and what was special about that is that's when it felt like we really started humming as an agency.
Yeah, that's cool. Getting some real momentum. And does that lead to a lot of also new work and stuff kind of comes in once you sort of get those accolades? Does it sort of kind of trickle in?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of goes back to what I said. For the first time, we had a brand. And, you know, when you have success on stages like that and other big media moments or other things that just the industry notices, for the first time, you have potential brand partners knocking on your door, which is like the best feeling in the world. Because for two things. One, it's just, you know, reassuring that people want to work with you, but you could be selective of your clients and find the ones that align with your agency ethos and the things you want to do. And for us, it was always important to find clients that like we wanted to work with, who shared the desire to do great work, that were good people and not jerks. And we've, for the last 7 years since then, have done a good job of that. And it's why we've pretty much maintained every relationship we've ever had.
Yeah, I was reading about that. Relationships are definitely a key thing for you guys trying to be, agency and client healthy client and agency relationships. I noticed was something that was sort of part of your like core mission.
Yeah, it's everything. If you think about just like the core idea of that with any good relationship or your best friend or your spouse is when things are healthy, you could have open conversations and it just works better. And you've applied that to advertising, you know, if you walk into a meeting with a client and you're on eggshells because things aren't going great and you're afraid of saying something, it just stifles creativity. But if it's open and if it's a safe place where you could throw an idea, and maybe it's not a great one. And then for the same side, the client can too. And they're not afraid of saying, you know, the one thing I always hate that clients say is, hey, I'm not the creative, but what if we, because they are creative to a degree and they live and breathe their business 24/7. So
Yeah.
because of that, they're going to have a lot of really good ideas. So when you walk into a meeting and there's a mutual respect and that you generally like each other, people are sharing free flowing ideas back and forth, and you're not worried about saying something stupid. And if you do, sometimes it sparks something else. And it's a pretty magical process once you establish that relationship. And we stand by it on every relationship we have.
Yeah, I really like that philosophy of where like no idea is a bad idea, and really having the respect for your client that it is their business and they're probably gonna have a lot of great ideas. They might not even know it, but they probably have a lot to offer in the success of what you're gonna do.
Oh my God, so many times. I at High Dive, some of our better spots have come from a client idea or even like an account person idea on our side. Like a few years ago, we did this great NHL spot, who's also a client of ours. And we were in a meeting together, just talk about what we want to do for the year. And one of the clients walked by, popped his head into the office, and he said, "Hey, we got this idea. I got this idea for the playoffs. the Stanley Cup's coming out, and all these players are kind of swooning over it. And we show a series of them kissing it, and the line pops up: "You never forget your first kiss." And everyone kind of laughed. And I'm like, well, that's incredible. Fast forward 5 months later, we're working on the playoff work. I'm looking through all the agency work and I'm like, well, nothing has beaten that yet. And like, that's the one we ended up
Wow.
making and getting nominated for a sports Emmy for. So, look, a lot of people say ideas can come from anywhere. And I don't think they always mean it. They do. Like, even on Jeep, Olivier Francois is like a creative, genius. And he's got a lot of great ideas. And a lot of the work we've done together has been from these collaborative conversations. And Randy Ortiz, who's like the brand lead there, it's like when you start texting with this is the healthy relationship. You start texting, you have a thought, and in the middle of the night, you get a text. You're like, that's great. And, you just run with it and it works.
That's cool. What is your specific role, within the agency? And I guess maybe you could tell me about that. And also, um, yeah, I'd be curious to see what a whole project looks like, kind of from the beginning to the end. If you guys are partnering with other sort of production or post companies, and just sort of what the whole package kind of looks like.
Well, my role as the co-chief creative officer is me and Mark Gross, my partner. We are responsible for every piece of creative that walks out the door. Do you mean like just in general? How does like a campaign get made?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from like, when a client has approached you and says, we want to do a campaign for this, and you've got the job, and what does it look like from like those initial meetings to um, you know, the package from there.
Sure. When they come, a lot of times they're coming to us with a business problem. We need to reach this, we need to sell this candy to 18 to 34-year olds or something like that. The beginning of the process usually starts with our strategy team. And we do, well, we call discovery, or every agency has their own term for it. But you dig a little bit deep and you find some insights of, okay, why aren't 18 to 34-year olds connecting? What would make them connect? What is some things going on in culture that overlaps their interest in what we're trying to do? From there, we'll have a few of these strategy sessions with the client. We'll ultimately align on a brief. The brief is a distilled version of everything we found and what we're trying to do. And then you'll take anywhere, depending on the timing of things. Sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes it's 3 months. And our creative teams will work on solutions for that. And then, we'll share work, usually in multiple rounds. We're big on not going away for like, 2 months and saying, ta da. We like to, for all the reasons I talked about, like bring the client in early and often and share this stuff. The client falls in love with an idea, and let's just say it's a TV spot for the sake of conversation. We love it, and then we'll go find a director who could bring it to life in a great way, and a production company. And then, on the post side of things, the editor, if it's a comedy spot, you'll find a great comedy director, a great comedy editor, and get it out there.
Yeah. And how do you build that sort of database? Do you have a core of people that you typically go to when you have a TV spot? Are you sort of looking for new people and sort of actively recruiting new people for new different things, or how does that work?
Both. You definitely have your short bench, people that you get along with both creatively and on a personal level, and work you really respect from them. Like, for example, a lot of the comedy spots we've won a few Super Bowls with Jim Jenkins out of O Positive, and really just like his style and the way he goes about doing things. And on top of it, he's just really really good at making work special. And then other cases, you're doing something where, maybe some of your go-tos, it's not a great fit, or maybe they're not available. And, on Airheads, we jump around a little bit more and try to tap some talent that isn't like one of the big marquee names. And, if you do a great, if it works and it was a good process, you might hit them again, or you might find someone new next time. From an editor standpoint, we like to kind of keep it to our go-to editor. At least I personally do. I just think they start to develop an understanding of the way you like to look at edits, and they even start to develop a brand understanding of what's important to the client. So I think people are a little bit more they have a shorter bench of editors probably than anyone else. At least we do.
Yeah. How is the team structured? How many people do you have working for you right now?
The agency's at like 135 now.
Big,
Which
it's a good
yeah,
size
I mean,
agency.
it's weird to say that out loud because like used to be two people in a closet.
Yeah.
Um, but it all depends. On the juicier assignments, we want everyone to be able to take a crack at it. So it ranges from 2 creative teams to 6 creative teams, depending on, the timeline and the availability and, sometimes just the agreed upon scope with the client. But yeah, it all depends.
And do a lot of people work remotely, or do you have like do you do an office type of thing, or what sort of the how does that work in terms of collaborating as a team?
We do. I'm at the office right now. We have an office in the Merchandise Mart in Chicago. We're both. If you live in Illinois in the city, we'd love for you to come in a few days a week. We're firm believers in that in the room energy. I think there's a lot of benefits to just sitting around and looking at someone not through a computer screen
Yeah.
all the time. But a lot of our employees don't live in the state. And for one reason or another, maybe we were recruiting great talent that wasn't interested in moving to Chicago. Maybe we had great talent that had a life reason to leave another state. So it's a case by case situation for us. But we put talent before anything else. If
Yeah.
you're a good cultural fit with the agency and you're a great talent, we'll make it work.
Interesting. You're the first guest I've had on this program that is actually based in Chicago. I've been really interested in speaking to somebody from Chicago actually because I do most of the work I do is in LA and New York and London. But I know that Chicago is quite the creative agency hub. It seems like it's really like there's a lot going on there. So it's really interesting to have a conversation, especially because you guys are like independent
Yep.
agencies. So you guys are, I guess more the Chicago agencies that they're more of those bigger ones,
Legacy
right?
agencies. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know why. It feels like some of the smaller independents are LA, New York, and Chicago's a little bit more the old legacy agencies. It's a great advertising city. For a long time, it was the best advertising city in the world. And I think things are swinging back in that momentum. I don't think it's quite what it used to be. Like a lot of it has to do with where the brands are located. There's a lot of great brands in the Midwest. I think what you get from Midwest agencies is a little bit of a Midwest sensibility that you don't always find on the coast.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Do you Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I had a senior moment there for a minute. I had something compelling to say, but I lost it.
Yeah, no worries.
um, yeah, I don't know. I think my brain got away. Actually, my wife and I have been. I do remember what I was going to say, but my wife and I were watching some old Saturday Night Lives going through from from way back to now. And we were going back and watching the Chicago one. Actually, yesterday it came by with the classic, the Bears or the Bulls. I don't know if you remember that episode.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
yeah, it's a really funny episode we saw last night.
I
But
actually did a campaign with those guys years ago at the old agency with State Farm, the super fans. And it was with Robert Smigel and who's the guy from Cheers?
damn it,
Blanking on his name, but yeah, we did a whole campaign. It was like they were Bears fans and they sat next to Aaron Rodgers on a plane. It was a funny
are you a Chicago native?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I grew up in the burbs and I live in the burbs now.
Nice. What do you enjoy doing outside of just this creative agency space? Like, what are some of your personal hobbies and things you enjoy?
Yeah, with all my free time. I was just kidding. I don't have any free time. Big sports guy.
No one in a creative agency ever.
Yeah, big sports guy. I'm a season ticket holder at the Bears. I go to Hawks games once they bounce back, and yeah, it's usually work and sports is kind of my two things.
Yeah. Is it hard to get a ticket for Bears games? Or is it is it not too
Not
difficult?
lately because they
Yeah.
suck. I hope it gets hard soon, but it's been a brutal few years. But we'll see.
I've never actually been to an NFL football game. It's been on my bucket list. I guess it was like years ago. My dad took me to a CFL game because, well, I'm actually located in Vermont right now. A lot of people don't realize that our offices are really in LA, but I live here. So we're kind of close to Canada, to Montreal. So I've
Yep.
seen some CFL games. Saw Doug Flutie play when he was a CFL guy. So Yeah, but I'd love to go see an NFL game. I guess close. It's harder to go from me. I guess where the closest to go would maybe be like Giants. Maybe they suck too.
Yeah. So yeah, you got to get to it. It's a blast.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm always interested in I guess how you ended up scaling. You just told me a minute ago that you guys had like it was just the two of you. Like what did it look like? Like what was like the next like hire? When did you see that you were ready to like get the next person? And when were you like, oh, we should get an office? Or how does that how does that happen?
Pretty organically. We started small, and then we started with like we let with an account guy, Matt Gallo, and account person, Ali Withy from TDB. And the beginning was tough, and they had some different life ambitions, so they ended up leaving with us. Where the tide really started to change was our current CEO, Megan Lally, and my partner, who one of our partners who died a few years ago, Louis, they also left about the same time of their big agency. So they were at Leo Burnett. We were at TDB. And as I always joke, like we needed the adults in the room because Mark and I are like the creative guys. And when we started working with them, it was probably like 9 or 10 months into breaking off. I think we started to become a little bit more legitimized. So then you have four people, and I don't know, things just kind of happen. You start winning some business, and then they started hiring people that they knew. So we need another account person. Now, one of our partners at the agency, Kaylee Lambeth, also came from Leo. And then, one of our big origin stories is we had a lot of success with Jeep. So then we had to staff up for Jeep, and then we had to hire some creative. So we hired now our ECD, who's been there for 6 years, like Pat Burke and Casey Stern. And then you start pitching and winning other business. Some of our clients who worked with us on cars, knew other people at Rocket Mortgage. So then we got opportunities with them. And then, you start in some wins, you win some business pitches, and then it gets a little scary because you're like, okay, how do we maintain our culture and the things we do well and not grow too fast? Because you've seen the pitfalls of that. But again, we were just kind of selective of who we worked with, who we pitched. And for the first 5 years, it was kind of great because you could just hire people that you worked with and that you love from other agencies. And I think that's like tapped out for us. So now, we actually have like traditional recruiters, and we're bringing people in. But then what happens is it opens up the floodgates again, because when you bring in people you don't know, now they have a pocket of people that they loved that they haven't worked with in a few years from other agencies and so on. So it's just a combination of, finding the right accounts, winning the pitch, which is big, and then building teams in the agency that represents the culture that was from the year before. I always was telling people that like every 6 months, especially in the beginning, it's a very different agency. Having a 10-person agency is a different agency than 30 people. And then you blink and you're like, okay, now we have a 60-person agency. That's a different agency from the 30-person agency. And now at 135 or whatever we're at, it's very different than where we were 2 years ago. The way we do things, but the things that never changes is like the core values of what you believe in, and the culture of what the made it from the people who work here.
Yeah. What are you seeing as the biggest pain points that are in the industry right now? I know I talked to a lot of agency leaders that talk about budgets are lower, there's in-housing, there's AI, there's all these different things that are out there that are sometimes squeezing creative agencies, not saying all of them, but curious what you're seeing.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
AI is scary, but also really exciting. I think that's going to really benefit agencies. I think it's going to be a little bit scarier for production companies long term. For agencies, I think that's going to be really cool because we're going to be able to build the plane as we fly it. We're going to have an idea, walk down the hall to our studio, like we have a studio called 19, and instead of like waiting to see what this thing would be, you just go make it, and you
Yeah.
could share iterations with the client. And I think that's awesome because no idea will die due to budgetary constraints. I think that's really exciting. I think creatives will in a weird way become directors, and directors will become creatives, and I think that's going to be amazing. Like you're going to have a great idea and you're just going to be able to make it. The big pain points for me, it's what they've always been. Pitches are stressful. And when you don't win them, it's a bummer. And when you win them, it's thrilling. And then it's just trying to manage all that without burning out everyone who works here, because a pitch is a full-time job on top of a full-time job. So I think that's probably the big thing is, you know, every time you win another piece of business, you're providing more job security for the people who work here. It's just a little bit more security. If an account goes away and ultimately it happens, you could help find a new home for people. So the biggest pain point to me is what it was 15, 20 years ago. It's managing that growth while not burning people out.
Yeah. When looking to win those pitches, maybe just for people that might not understand, do you get paid in the beginning to start generating that idea, competing with lots of different agencies, and then sort of the agency sort of decides which one they want, and that's where you sort of get the big.
It depends. I would say the majority of pitches are not paid.
Yeah.
Well, not the majority, half aren't paid and half are.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, it's worked for us where there's been a pitch situation and the client's in a hurry and we're like, why don't we just do a project together? You guys are in a hurry. Pitches are take a lot of time. And some of those relationships have turned into like 4 or 5 year AOR relationships because it just, the project went well. There was a good chemistry between us and the client, but they're not all, and it's great when they're paid for. In a weird way, when they're paid for, you have a bigger accountability as an agency to deliver really good work in the pitch because they're paying you. So I think there's an upside that a lot of clients who do pay for pitches, they're getting the best out of their agency because they paid for it. It's easy when bandwidth gets thin, be like, we'll give it our best shot because we don't really owe them anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you try to use that as much as possible to try to deal with, especially like repeat business? Do you use that sort of as leverage to say like, hey, if we're going to continue to work, like, how about the paid pitch? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Usually we don't like pitch every single assignment, with it's usually in the first one. And if it's a big one, like if it's Super Bowl, you might have to pitch it every year.
yeah,
I think a lot of brands are doing that now where on like those special occasion big media moments, they appreciate a different point of view from a few different shops. But for the most part, we're not pitching every single assignment across the year. In a lot of cases, we don't pitch any of them. In a lot of our relationships, we're responsible for a scope of work that that is set aside for High Dive to deliver on.
yeah. It makes me think of like, I do a lot of creative recruitment work, and I always do, I give clients a scorecard based on the role that they give me typically, which is kind of and if they give me a role that I think is like an F, which is just like you're working with other recruiting agencies, communication is bad, the fee is low, the price of the that you're going to pay the person is not competitive with market, like, the agency stinks and I have to like sell it. So they get a scorecard, and sometimes the client will come to me and I'll be like, I'm not going to do this, man. It's like, this
Yeah.
is role's kind of an F. But then the client that says, hey, you know, we're going to give you an exclusive retained search for these three roles, and we're going to give you, a third of it down, and you're going to fill these roles. This is for you. And those people we tend to deliver for
Yeah, you
on the
feel
top of the chart.
feel an obligation. Additionally, one of my biggest issues with jump balls all the time is it takes away the brand partnership to a degree. Where when one agency is working behind it, the agency is less focused of winning the pitch and more focused on doing what's right for the brand. And that might mean you're going to have a few bad meetings because you have conviction of what we're suggesting is right for the brand. If it's multiple jump balls, I think agencies feel a little less, I don't know, cavalier in of like saying, no, you got to do this. Trust us here, because then they don't get the business. And then, there's the business implications of like not winning the pitch. So I
Yeah.
think over time, the best relationships are not that jump ball approach. If you just look at the history of advertising, usually it's not the case. But I get why it makes sense on some bigger media moments.
Yeah. Yeah, and same in my business too. There's some clients that, you know, we will I will be open to trying something in a different fashion if I really believe in the client and letting them get to know me and kind of all that stuff. So that's definitely a, I guess, for lack of a better term, many ways to skin a cat, I guess. But you were talking about AI, and I was getting kind of interested in that also because you had mentioned when you were talking about like the series of steps that you go with through client and how like the first step is sort of like the strategy session where you're sort of like the client is telling you like, hey, I want to sell this product to this demographic, or they have a problem in selling it to this demographic. Like how can we do that? I'm curious how AI works with you guys. I mean, obviously I know it creates ideas. I mean, I use it all the time in my work, but do you even use it maybe like in the conversation part where it's like you're getting a transcript of that conversation and sort of using the AI as well as like a
Sure.
buddy?
Yeah, like even to summarize like a conference, like a meeting report. But yeah, we use
Yeah,
it.
or to just sort of be like, "Hey, this was the conversation," and then I'm also gonna ask the AI, like, "Do you have some, suggestions on how we can pitch so and so to this demographic?" And or do you try to do it more organically before you get to
No,
that?
all the above. Like the strategy department will use it on early like deep digs on the industry and what's going on. And in some cases, and I think they're working on this right now, is like training models to represent like the target demo for a brand. So if you had an idea, you could throw it to that trained model and, see how that market would potentially respond based on how the AI responds. So yeah, we're using it more and more every day. It's the internet. Like it's the best tool you can possibly use. I think if you don't embrace it wholeheartedly, you're gonna be screwed.
100% agree with you. Is it just, I guess, what are some tools that you guys are using? I mean, obviously there's ChatGPT. Is there other sort of different things that you're using within your team and your workflow that have been helpful to you?
Yeah, ChatGPT, Claude, Midjourney. We're starting to mess around with like Pika and sorry, what is that other one? Some of the video, Gemini, all of them, Grok. Like our studio, I've charged them in the last like few months. Is like we need to be like the experts, in the next few months of like knocking out short content video. Some of it looks amazing. Think about just like a social presence for a brand. Sometimes a video is 6 seconds, or sometimes a brand just has a pretty decent following on Instagram or TikTok. You could use that stuff to service that from a production standpoint. 50% of the content. So we're really using everything across the board.
Are you the champion for that? Are you the one that's sort of like trying the new tools and doing most of that within the company, or do you have a like a does
I think everyone's pretty excited about it. I think from a leadership standpoint, I am leading that charge with our head of production, Jen, on that. But there's a lot of creatives here and a lot of people who are as good as anyone in the world who just have a passion for it and who are trying some cutting edge stuff and trying to apply that to brands. It doesn't take a lot of arm twisting here. People love it and they're using it organically.
Yeah, I'm definitely a person who's equally excited about that world. Just I guess for me the problem is I just offered so many different tools and things to look at that I feel like I would be spending like every minute of my day trying something new and trying to figure out if it can like do something for me. And I wouldn't do anything. I would just be trying tools all day.
I agree. That's why I want the studio to just be the hub of gurus there. And so you don't necessarily have to know how to use all nine text to video tools, but our department does. And you can walk down and be like, hey, what would it look like to see an elephant eat a bag of Lay's? I don't know what the idea is. Just saying, and like you could walk away and in 20 minutes, like, hey, that's pretty funny. Let's go with that. And it's okay, is this good enough to make the entire piece of content this way? Or at least good enough to sell the idea?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. We use it a lot for like in interviewing people and sort of summarizing conversations, making pitches. But there's a lot of AI agents going on in the recruitment world where paying for an AI agent that's like a member of your team that has a personality that is like outbound, reaching out to other people to sell you, which is just so bizarre. But I just went to a conference and was looking at all the different things that like Salesforce is doing, all these different companies, and how this is integrating into different sales in the sales world. It's just it's pretty crazy. I think that one thing that it's really changing is, and probably in a lot of industries, is like there's no, if you're just a generalist at what you do, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a shrinking ecosystem. Like you're really, and no matter what you do, you're going to have to be really an expert to survive, because if a AI agent can do a multi-channel outbound campaign selling you better than the average person, like you're
Yeah.
not going to be you're not going to have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. I think being an expert and be a hyper discipline, um, it's going to be the relationship side of it. And I haven't had a ton of experience with like those chat bots like that. I've heard good things, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I guess just to close out here, because we're on our last couple minutes, I'm always interested in what leaders look for in talent in their team. And I guess maybe I'd be curious, so when you're hiring yourself personally, what you're looking for in the individuals and what sort of things stand out to you. Obviously when you put a job out there, there's like thousands of applicants, and it's time consuming to sift through them. What are the things that stand out to you and the people that you ultimately hire?
Yeah, beyond just, a good book, like a body of work that they've done. You start there unless they're a junior and then maybe they got a student book. But for me, there's like three big things probably. Number one, I like a work ethic. I like people who are passionate about advertising and who want to put in the work. Um, I I could anyone who wants to work hard will have a place here. Another big thing for me that I've been stressing a lot is being a student of culture. I think that's the most powerful advertising out there right now is the work that either leverages culture or creates culture. And to do that, you have to have an understanding of that. And that doesn't mean in your own little box of the type of music you like and the type of movies you like and the type of art you like. It means knowing the type of music they like and they like and they like and the type of movies they like. And like I always am like, watch the MTV Movie Awards, even if you've aged out of it. It's Cliff Notes.
Right.
Watch every award show, go to every site and know what all of your consumers from all your different clients, what they're consuming and what's important to them across pop culture. That's a big one. I always ask this question during an interview, and as I always ask, like, what shows are you watching, what movies? And it's crazy because some creatives would be like, I don't watch TV, and I'm like, well, you're not hired. You're in the business of making mass media. You don't watch TV. Go. I don't understand that. Like, and they do it. They talk about it like it's a badge of honor. So culture's a big thing. And finally, get shit done.
Yeah.
Like the ability to like get shit done and just and do it well. And like have an idea and come back in a few hours or a few days and be like, hey, look, and like make it something. Doesn't mean it has to be the whole thing, but just figure out ways to showcase the idea. And then finally, just care about everything. I think more than anything, this industry is suffering from craft a little bit. I don't know if it's bounced back since COVID. There was a time where like you would go to callbacks and sit with the director and workshop the script, which I make as a mandatory in every shoot now. Because we got in a habit of not doing that. And then you would sit with the editor in person, not through a computer for 3 or 4 days, and make sure you went through every single take to make sure it was the best performance you could possibly have for that scene. And then you sit with the sound engineer and you try things. So many times, a spot that isn't funny could be saved by just what you do in sound design. So you have to care. You have to want to be there. You have to put in the time. The combination of all those four things is what I really want.
Awesome, Chad. Well, it was so great having you here. I think I got some great sound bites here on
So,
that last golden nugget. And yeah, I want to thank you for being on here today. Got to be honest, I was embarrassed. I did not pronounce your company correctly when we had tried this early. So yeah, make sure you guys all check out High Dive Advertising. And yeah, Chad, it's been really wonderful having a conversation with you today. I value your time, and I hope we can continue having conversations in the future.
of course, thanks for reaching out.
All right, Chad, be well, man.
Thanks.